They called her a gold digger, a nobody, a woman with nothing, chasing a man with something. For 3 years, they humiliated her at every family dinner. They laughed at her clothes. They mocked her simple job. They gave her a book titled The Art of Marrying Up as a Christmas gift. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't have possibly imagined, was that the woman they were calling poor could have bought their entire family 100 times over. The woman they thought had nothing? She owned half the luxury hotels in the world. And the night they pushed her too far, she pulled out a black metal card and made one phone call that shattered everything they thought they knew. This is the story of Claire, a billionaire heiress who walked away from everything to find real love. A woman who stayed silent through years of insults because she wanted to be valued for her heart, not her bank account. But silence has its limits. And when she finally spoke, the room went dead silent. Stay with me, because what happens next will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about worth, love, and the assumptions we make about people. This story will stay with you long after it ends. Let's begin. Give me an emotional and catchy hook for the story that will catch the audience's attention the first few seconds in and will make them watch till the end. Let me tell you about a woman named Claire. Now, Claire wasn't just anybody. She was born into the kind of wealth most of us only see in movies. The Whitmore family. Maybe you've heard of them. They own half the luxury hotels across Europe and America. That beautiful resort you saw on your honeymoon? Probably theirs. That 5-star hotel chain with the golden logo? Whitmore property. Claire grew up in mansions with more rooms than she could count. She had tutors, drivers, personal assistants. Her childhood birthday parties made the news. At 18, she inherited a trust fund that could buy a small country. But here's the thing about growing up with that much money. You stop knowing who your real friends are. Every smile felt calculated. Every conversation felt like a pitch. People wanted to be near her, sure, but they didn't want to know her. They wanted to know her connections. Her money. Her last name. She'd go on dates with men who'd already Googled her net worth before dessert arrived. She'd make friends who'd ask for loans before asking about her day. Love, real love, it felt impossible. By the time Claire turned 28, she was exhausted. Exhausted from the fake smiles, the networking events, the people who saw her as a walking checkbook. She looked at her life, all that luxury and privilege, and felt completely empty. So she did something that shocked everyone who knew her. She walked away. Not forever. Not completely. But she needed to disappear for a while. She needed to know what it felt like to be valued for something other than her bank account. Claire moved to a small city 3 states away. Somewhere nobody knew the Whitmore name. She rented a modest apartment in an old building with creaky floors and neighbors who said good morning. She took a job at the local public library, working the front desk, helping people find books, organizing the children's reading hour. She introduced herself as Claire Bennett. Just Claire. A woman with a quiet job and a simple life. And for the first time in years, she felt like she could breathe. The library became her sanctuary. She loved the smell of old books, the sound of pages turning, the way people's faces lit up when they found exactly what they were looking for. She made friends with the other librarians. She grabbed coffee at the corner cafe. She lived in a world where nobody cared about her last name because nobody knew it. It was in that library, surrounded by stories and silence, that she met him. His name was Daniel. Daniel was a freelance graphic designer with kind eyes and a smile that made her feel safe. He came to the library every Tuesday and Thursday, working on his laptop in the corner by the window. He always ordered the same coffee from the cafe next door, black, with 1 sugar. One day, he asked Claire for help finding a book on vintage typography. They started talking. And then they kept talking. He told her about his dreams of starting his own design studio one day. She told him about her favorite novels. He made her laugh with terrible puns. She challenged him to read books he'd never considered. Weeks turned into months. Coffee conversations turned into long din walks. And somewhere along the way, Claire fell in love. Daniel didn't know about the hotels, or the trust fund, or the family empire. He knew Claire the librarian, the woman who got excited about first editions and cried during sad movies, the woman who brought him soup when he had a cold and remembered how he liked his coffee. He loved her for her. Just her. And that was everything she'd been searching for. When Daniel finally asked her to be his girlfriend, Claire said yes, without hesitation. Her heart felt full in a way it never had before. This was real. This was pure. This was love without conditions. But then Daniel wanted her to meet his family. And that's when everything got complicated. Daniel's family wasn't wealthy like hers. They were comfortable, middle class, hardworking. His father owned a small accounting firm. His mother was a nurse. His younger brother was in college, studying engineering. They were good people. Salt of the earth, as they say. But they were also protective. Especially of Daniel. The first dinner at the family home was tense. Claire wore a simple dress, brought homemade cookies, smiled politely. But she could feel their eyes on her, studying her, measuring her. Daniel's mother, Patricia, asked the questions. Where are you from? What does your family do? Do you have siblings? Claire had prepared her answers. She kept them vague but truthful. My parents passed away when I was young. I was raised by a guardian. I don't have much family left. Something shifted in the room. Daniel's brother, Josh, exchanged a look with their mother. Patricia's smile became tighter. Daniel's father, Richard, cleared his throat uncomfortably. She could see it in their eyes. The judgment forming. The assumptions taking root. A woman with no family. No background they could verify. No clear history. Working a low-paying job. Dating their successful son. In their minds, the math was simple. She was after something. And just like that, Claire realized she'd traded one kind of judgment for another. Before, people wanted her for her money. Now, people thought she wanted theirs. The irony would have been funny if it didn't hurt so much. But she loved Daniel. And she believed, maybe naively, that love would be enough. That his family would see her the way he did, given time. She had no idea how wrong she was. The disrespect didn't come all at once. It was subtle at first. Little comments that could almost pass as jokes. Almost. Patricia would make remarks about Claire's clothes. Oh, that's a lovely dress, dear. I love how you make the most of what you have. Josh would talk about expensive restaurants and vacations, then turn to Claire with exaggerated sympathy. Oh, you probably haven't been to places like that. It's okay, they're overrated anyway. At family gatherings, they'd forget to include her in conversations. They'd talk about investments and property, and things Claire knew more about than all of them combined, but she stayed quiet. She'd promised herself she wouldn't reveal who she really was. She needed this relationship to be real. Daniel's sister-in-law, Amanda, was perhaps the worst. She'd whisper just loud enough for Claire to hear. Gold digger, she'd murmur to Josh. She's playing the long game. Daniel defended her every time. He'd argue with his mother, snap at his brother, demand they treat Claire with respect. But it was exhausting for both of them. Claire endured it because she loved him. Because she'd finally found something real, and she wasn't ready to let it go. But there were moments when she wanted to scream the truth. When Patricia made a comment about Claire not contributing enough to a group gift. When Richard suggested Daniel keep his finances separate, just in case. When Amanda loudly discussed prenuptial agreements at Sunday dinner. Claire would grip her coffee cup and remind herself why she'd left her old life. She wanted to be loved for who she was, not what she had. She wanted Daniel to love Claire the person, not Claire the heiress. So she stayed silent. 2 years into their relationship, Daniel proposed. He took her to the botanical gardens at sunset, got down on one knee under a flowering archway, and offered her a simple silver ring he'd saved for 6 months to buy. It was the most beautiful moment of Claire's life. She said yes through happy tears. Yes to this man who saw her. Yes to this love that asked for nothing but her heart. When they told his family, the reaction was ice cold. Patricia pulled Claire aside at the engagement party, her voice low and threatening. I don't know what game you're playing, but my son has a future. We won't let you ruin it. If you think you're getting access to anything he builds, think again. We're watching you. Claire looked her straight in the eye. The only thing I want from your son is his love. I'm sorry you can't see that. Patricia laughed bitterly. Girls like you always say that. The message was clear. They would never accept her. They would always see her as an outsider, an opportunist, a threat. Daniel tried to build bridges. He'd have conversations with his parents, pleading with them to give Claire a chance. But they'd made up their minds. The worst moment came at Patricia and Richard's anniversary dinner. It was at an upscale restaurant, the kind with cloth napkins and wine lists thicker than novels. Daniel had just gotten a big contract for a corporate rebranding project, and he insisted on treating the whole family to celebrate both occasions. Throughout dinner, they praised Daniel endlessly while ignoring Claire completely, as if she were invisible, as if she were just furniture sitting beside him. When dessert was finished, Richard stood up with his wine glass. He made a long toast about Daniel's success, his hard work, his generosity. Then Richard turned to Claire, his smile cruel. And a special thank you to Claire for allowing Daniel to spend his hard-earned money so freely tonight. Must be nice to finally enjoy the finer things in life. The table fell silent. It was a direct, public insult. A declaration in front of everyone that she was exactly what they'd always thought, a woman after his money. Daniel started to stand, his face flushed with anger, but Claire gently touched his arm. For 3 years she'd endured their whispers and their judgment. She'd stayed quiet to protect what she had with Daniel. But in that moment she realized something. Her silence wasn't protecting him. It was enabling them. It was letting them hurt the man she loved, over and over, because they thought she was weak, because they thought she had no power. It was time they learned the truth. Claire folded her napkin slowly and placed it on the table. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. She looked at Richard, and when she spoke, her voice was calm, clear, unshakable. "You're right, Richard," she said. "It is nice to enjoy good things. Which is why tonight, I'll be taking care of the bill." She raised her hand, and immediately a waiter appeared. "The check, please." For the entire table. Patricia started to object. "Claire, that's not necessary, we were just—" "I insist," Claire said softly. The waiter nodded and hurried away. The table exchanged confused glances. They thought she was being proud, trying to prove something she couldn't afford. Amanda actually smirked, probably imagining Claire's credit card getting declined. The waiter returned with the bill. The total was over $3,000. Claire reached into her simple handbag and pulled out a card. But it wasn't a regular credit card. It was black, made of metal, with a distinctive design that anyone who knew wealth would recognize instantly. The Centurion card. Invitation only. Reserved for people who spent millions annually. The waiter's eyes went wide. He'd been trained to recognize it. His entire demeanor shifted, from polite to almost reverent. Right away, MS. He glanced at the name on the card. His face went pale. Right away, Ms. Whitmore. The name hung in the air like a thunderclap. Whitmore. Josh frowned. Whitmore. Why did he call you Whitmore? Claire didn't answer. Instead, she took out her phone, set it on the table, and dialed a number. On speaker. A professional voice answered on the first ring. Whitmore Hospitality Group, Catherine speaking. How may I assist you, Ms. Whitmore? Claire's voice was steady. Catherine, it's Claire. I need a status update on the Barcelona property acquisition. Did our offer go through? The family sat frozen, forks halfway to mouths, wine glasses suspended in midair. Yes, Ms. Whitmore, Catherine replied. The board accepted this afternoon. The Hotel Mariposa is now officially Whitmore property. Excellent, Claire said calmly. And please have my car brought to the front of Marcelo's restaurant in 10 minutes. The Bentley. She ended the call. The silence that followed was suffocating. Patricia's face had gone white. Richard stared at Claire as if seeing a stranger. Josh looked like he might be sick. Amanda's smirk had completely vanished. Daniel looked between Claire and his family, confusion and realization dawning on his face. Claire finally turned to face them all. There was no triumph in her expression, no satisfaction, just a deep, profound sadness. For 3 years, she said quietly, I have listened to you call me unworthy. I have watched you disrespect the woman your son loves. I never said anything, because I wanted a life where my last name didn't matter. She looked at Daniel, her voice softening. I wanted love that was real. And I found it. With him. Then back to his family. Your son's love was the only thing I was ever after. I'm truly sorry you were all too small-minded to see it. She stood, her posture straight, regal. Every inch the heiress she'd been hiding. Dinner is paid for. Please, enjoy the rest of your evening. She took Daniel's hand, and together they walked out of that restaurant, leaving his family sitting in the wreckage of their own assumptions. The car ride home was silent at first. Claire gripped the steering wheel of her regular car, not the Bentley, she'd lied about that, and tried to steady her breathing. Daniel sat in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead. Finally he spoke. Whitmore. His voice was quiet. As in the Whitmore hotels? Claire nodded, not trusting her voice. You're that Whitmore? Yes. More silence. Then Daniel asked the question she'd been dreading. Why didn't you tell me? Claire pulled over to the side of the road. She couldn't have this conversation while driving. She turned to face him, tears building in her eyes. Because I needed to know, she whispered. I needed to know that you loved me.
Just me.
Not the heiress. Not the trust fund. Not the connections or the properties or the name. She wiped her eyes. Do you know what it's like, Daniel? Growing up never knowing if people want you, or want what you can give them. Every friend, every relationship, every conversation, there's always this question in the back of your mind. Are they real? Or are they using me? Daniel's expression softened. I've had men propose after knowing me for 3 weeks, Claire continued. I've had friends ask for loans before asking about my day. I've been invited to events where I'm not a guest, I'm a checkbook. I was so tired of it. So tired of being invisible behind my bank account. She took his hand. When I met you for the first time in my life, someone saw me. You didn't want anything from me. You liked my book recommendations. You laughed at my jokes. You brought me coffee the way I like it. You saw Claire. Just Claire. I did see you, Daniel said softly. I do see you. But if I told you on our first date that I was worth billions, would you have seen me the same way? Or would you have changed? Would you have been nervous? Careful? Would you have wondered if you were good enough? Would you have treated me differently? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then, honestly, he said, I don't know. Maybe. Claire nodded. That's why I didn't tell you. I needed this to be real first. I needed our foundation to be solid before the weight of all that money came crashing down on it. I wish you'd trusted me, Daniel said. I do trust you. With everything.
But
Claire took a shaky breath. I've been burned so many times, Daniel. I just needed to be sure. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Daniel squeezed her hand. I fell in love with a librarian who makes terrible tea and cries during commercials, he said. Finding out she's rich doesn't change that. You're still the same person. Claire let out a sob of relief. But, Daniel continued, we need to talk about this. Really talk. Because this is huge, Claire. This changes things whether we want it to or not. I know, she whispered. And my family. Daniel closed his eyes.
God, my family.
They're going to be mortified, Claire offered. That's putting it lightly. They drove home and stayed up all night talking. Claire told him everything. About her childhood, her family, why she left. She showed him articles, photos, proof of who she really was. She explained her trusts, her properties, her role in the family business. Daniel listened to all of it, and then he asked, what do you want? What's your dream for your life? No one had ever asked her that before. I want to keep working at the library, Claire said. At least part-time. I love it there. And I want to use my money for good. Really good. Not just donations for tax breaks. I want to make a difference. And us? Daniel asked. What do you want for us? I want this, Claire said simply. You and me. I don't want my money to change us. I don't want it to become what we're about. It won't, Daniel promised. But we're partners now, which means I get a say in how we use it. Claire smiled through her tears.
Deal.
The calls from Daniel's family started the next morning. First Patricia, then Richard, then Josh. All of them apologetic. All of them making excuses. Daniel answered on speakerphone. "We didn't know," Patricia said, her voice strained. "If we'd known who she was." "Then what?" Daniel interrupted. "Then she would have been worthy? That's what you're saying." Silence on the other end. "You judged her because you thought she had nothing," Daniel said. "That says everything about you, not her." "We were trying to protect you," Patricia protested. "By humiliating the woman I love? By insulting her at every opportunity? By giving her a book about gold digging as a Christmas present?" More silence. "I need space," Daniel said finally. "From all of you. You owe Claire an apology, but honestly, I don't even know if that's enough." He hung up. The weeks that followed were healing. Daniel and Claire set boundaries with his family. Clear ones. No more surprise visits. No more critical comments. If they wanted to be part of their lives, they needed to respect Claire. Not because of her money, but because she was the woman Daniel loved. Some of them tried. Patricia sent flowers and a long letter apologizing. Richard called and had an awkward but genuine conversation with Claire. Josh sent a text that simply said, "I'm sorry. We were wrong." Amanda never apologized. Some people never do. But Claire and Daniel didn't need their approval anymore. They had each other, and that was enough. Claire went back to work at the library, and this time, she told her co-workers the truth. Not all of it, but enough. They were shocked, but they also knew her. They knew she was the same Claire who brought donuts on Fridays and organized the book club. Money didn't change that. With Daniel's support, Claire started using her wealth the way she'd always dreamed. She funded literacy programs across the state. She partnered with Daniel to create a design scholarship for underprivileged students. She renovated community centers and libraries, always working quietly, never putting her name on plaques. Daniel's design career flourished, not because of Claire's money or connections, but because his talent finally had the resources to shine. She helped him start his own studio, but the work was all his. They got married 2 years later in a small ceremony at the botanical gardens where he'd proposed. Patricia and Richard came. They were trying, in their way, to make amends. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. On their wedding day, as Claire stood in her simple but elegant dress, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. The loneliness of wealth, the freedom of anonymity, the judgment she'd faced, the love she'd found. Daniel took her hand and whispered, "No regrets." "Not one," she whispered back, because she'd found what she was looking for. Not someone who loved her despite her wealth, or because of it, but someone who loved her, period. The story could end there, and it would be beautiful. But there's one more thing worth telling. A year after the wedding, Claire was at the library helping a young girl find books for a school project. The girl's mother stood nearby, and Claire recognized her. Amanda, Daniel's sister-in-law. They hadn't spoken since the engagement party. Amanda looked uncomfortable, but she approached. "Claire," she said quietly, "do you have a moment?" They stepped aside. The little girl continued browsing. "I owe you an apology," Amanda said. "A real one, not a text or a card. I was cruel to you. I made assumptions and I was wrong. I'm ashamed of how I treated you." Claire studied her face. She saw genuine remorse there. "Why now?" Claire asked. Amanda glanced at her daughter. "Because she's watching. And I realized I was teaching her that it's okay to judge people, to make assumptions, to treat others badly because of what we think they have or don't have. I don't want her to be like I was." Claire felt her throat tighten. "I can't undo what I said," Amanda continued. "But I want you to know I see you now. Really see you. And I'm sorry it took so long." Claire nodded slowly. "Thank you. That means a lot." It wasn't perfect. Some wounds take time to heal. But it was a start. As Claire drove home that evening, she thought about everything she'd learned. About worth and judgment. About love and truth. About the courage it takes to be vulnerable. She'd spent years hiding her wealth, only to discover that hiding wasn't the answer. Neither was flaunting it. The answer was simply being herself, all of herself and letting that be enough. People will always make assumptions. They'll judge based on appearances, on what they think they know. But the truth is, you never really know someone's story until they choose to share it with you. Claire was more than her bank account. She was more than the Whitmore name. She was a woman who loved books and coffee and quiet mornings. A woman who'd been lonely and found love. A woman who'd been judged and chose grace instead of bitterness.
And Daniel?
He was more than the man who married a billionaire. He was the man who loved a librarian and never stopped seeing her that way, even when the truth came out. Together, they built a life that was rich in all the ways that mattered. Not because of money, though they had that, but because they had each other, because they had chosen honesty, because they had built something real. And, in the end, that's what true wealth really is. Not what you own, but who you are when you have nothing left to prove. If this story touched your heart, I hope you'll share it. Not because it's mine, but because maybe someone in your life needs to hear this message. That they are enough. That their worth isn't determined by their bank account or their background or what others assume about them. True value lives in how we treat others, in the love we give, in the grace we show even when others show us none. That's the kind of wealth that matters. That's the kind of wealth that lasts.